Welcome back to another edition of the Knight Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary. We have a lot to talk about today. 3 new commitments this weekend. First day of training camp today. Scarlet Open was yesterday. We're going to have 2 pods for you today. The first one's going to be recruiting. The second one is going to be team-related stuff. But first, this podcast is presented to you once again by Night and Day Apparel. Beat the heat this summer with our fresh, one-of-a-kind products. The temperature's rising. There's no better time to refresh your wardrobe with cool and stylish summer essentials. Whether you're planning a beach getaway, a picnic in the park, or simply lounging in the yard, we've got you covered. Visit their website today and explore a full range of summer essentials from pool floats and spatulas to bathing suits and tank tops. If you use our promo code Rutgers Rivals, you can get 10% off your purchase. Shop now and keep chopping. All right, so we got 3 commitments in the span of 24 hours from 3 separate recruiting classes. Now, I don't know if that's ever happened before in the history of recruiting. It probably has, but I can't think of one. So let's start off with the first commit, who also happened to be a member of the 2025 class. It is the 30th commitment of the class. This is tight end Ben Rothar. He previously was committed to Kent State. He ended up flipping from Kent State to Rutgers on, I believe, Saturday. So this kid was totally off the board for Rutgers, or for us at least. Tell us a little bit about how this commitment came together.
Like you said, Ben Rothhaar kind of came in out of nowhere. Tight end, also plays safety for his high school program. Came to campus this weekend for a workout in front of the staff. They always have a camp at the end of July. Obviously, they won't have it going forward because the new recruiting calendar doesn't have any openings in July. But, he came to camp, tested really well, tested out of this world, and they offered him on the spot, and he flipped. He flipped from Kent State. Obviously, there's some ties there because Colin Farrell, former Kent State coach, but they didn't even think they were going to take a tight end this cycle, from what I was told. But this kid showed out that much that they had no choice, really. They're like, oh, we don't have a tight end. This just kind of worked out really well. He tests really well. I'm looking at some of his testing numbers, a 4.5 40, 300 bench press, 10.9 100-meter dash at 6'5", 210. That's really impressive. Also squats 400 pounds, does the 400-meter dash. And a very smart kid, too. He has his GPA out there. And anytime that they are publicly putting their GPA out there, it's probably a good thing. Yep. But, this just seems like a very athletic kid. Now, he's not going to contribute early. They have a ton of tight ends. They just brought in 2 this past cycle. They have other guys that are still with multiple years of eligibility, like Mike Higgins, Logan Blake. I think Konopka's entering his last year this season. But, this is just an interesting get at tight end. It seems like these tight ends are mostly going to be blockers anyway for the most part. So it's not like it's a fancy or a sexy commit, but it was totally tested really well. Those numbers right there that I just read off are pretty good. And you just got to trust the staff a little bit on this one.
Yeah, and Rothar, if you just look at his kind of resume in general, he's 6'5", 210. He, like you said, he's a super athlete. He's trying to get 16 varsity letters by the time he graduates. So he's a 4-sport athlete, playing football, basketball, baseball, track. He goes to Norwalk High School in Norwalk, Ohio. It's not a big school. I'm looking now. They have an enrollment of less than 750 kids. So that's 175 kids a class around there. Very small school. He caught 32 passes for 451 yards and 3 touchdowns last year. He was also a kick returner. Like you said, he's a safety. He had 5 kickoff returns for 132 yards and a touchdown. This must be a guy that just truly blew the staff away because you said you had been hearing they weren't going to take a tight end. So for them to actually take a guy means that this kid's probably pretty underrated given how well they've been recruiting and how selective they've been with tight end offers especially. So this is a commit that I'm pretty excited about just because you don't get many true diamonds in the rough anymore where you're just kind of uncovering kids. And these are kind of the situations that end up creating those diamonds in the rough.
Yeah, I like this kid. I was watching his tape a second ago. He just seems really athletic, and that speed factor, you could see it on tape especially. But like you said, he's probably not playing the best competition, being the fact that his school is as small as it is. But hey, bulk him up, see what he could do. You got a bunch of tight ends now to work with too, so it doesn't, like, as much as you would love to hit on this kid, you don't necessarily have to either. So
yeah, yep, and you're gonna probably have to have at least 2 years of development time for most tight ends. So
yeah,
You don't expect him to play early just by the nature of the position.
Yep, but good get.
Good get, but it wasn't even close to the biggest get of the weekend ranking-wise. Now, the next commit is from the class of 2026. It was a guy that we've talked about quite a bit, a guy that had Rutgers pretty early on as one of the favorites. I think when you spoke to him, you said that Penn State and Rutgers were standing out. This is a four-star wide receiver, Dyzier Carter, out of Virginia. He has close ties to the staff from his brother. Tell us a little bit about how Dajier Carter ended up as a Rutgers commitment.
Yeah, so we mentioned this a couple times before. He, like you said, he's just very high on Rutgers previously, as previously reported on our site. But his brother, DeQuise Carter, played for Fordham, played for Demir Shaw, who was the wide receivers coach at Fordham back in 2019. So there's a little bit of a connection there. His brother also transferred to Indiana recently, this past 2023 season. So he's a fan of the Big Ten, I was told. He's just a crazy multi-sport athlete, plays basketball, plays football, runs track. Basically all the essentials that you want in a wide receiver. Very fast kid. This is just a huge get for Rutgers. They put in a lot of work here between the entire staff. This wasn't just like a single person's effort, but another thing that really stood out to him was Dave Brock's relationship with him. Not just his relationship, but also the fact that he's had all these NFL guys that he's coached in the past. And it's playing a big factor on the recruiting trail. And you can kind of sell guys and be like, hey, yeah, I coached Mohamed Sanu, the Rutgers guy, but I also coached Tulio Jones, who's one of the best Atlanta Falcons ever. So it's an easy sell when you can kind of just say that. But this is just a really good get for Rutgers. I think, what'd you say, it was ranked like 149, something like that? 186 in the country. But yeah, the interesting thing too is that he was going to go to Penn State on Saturday, and he didn't. And that was his top two schools, and he ended up just committing, what was it, Saturday? I forget. Saturday. Yeah, so instead of going to Penn State on that visit, who's another top school of his, he just committed on the spot at Rutgers. So really good get for Rutgers. Number 4 in Virginia, number 31 overall receiver, Rivals 200 kid, 4-star. If you look at his offer list, it's through the roof. And I know sometimes you can kind of question an offer list because they're probably not like newish offers. Hell, he got Florida State, USC, Michigan, Miami, South Carolina, all in April. So these are all fresh offers. This kid is a full-blown stud, and he's probably only going to move up the recruiting rankings. But this is one you're going to have to definitely keep an eye on for the long haul because it's a long way towards 2026 signing day.
Yeah, no, this is one of the biggest commitments that Schiano has gotten in his 1.0 or 2.0 era. I mean, there's not many guys that they land that are inside the top, the Rivals top 250. They get a lot of 4-stars, but there's a swath of 4-stars outside the top 250. Dajier Carter, he's listed at 6 foot, 180 pounds. Put up some gaudy stats last year playing for Woodbury Forest School. He had, I think, 850 receiving yards, but he had 16 touchdowns. He just kind of like plays way bigger than 6 feet tall. There's a bunch of really acrobatic jump balls that he wins over several defensive backs on his tape. There's plenty of times where he's just had a screen thrown to him and he just cuts through 2 defenders and basically goes untouched to the house. He's got legit speed. He's got a lot of shiftiness. Like, he's really tough to bring down because he's just so slippery. Legit track speed from what it looks like on tape too. This kid's going to be an early weapon for the Scarlet Knights, in my opinion.
Yeah, I can't rave about the kid enough. I think he's severely underrated according to our rankings. But like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if he made a huge leap in the next update, which I believe comes next month, I think. So something to keep an eye on. And for Rutgers fans, I mean, to beat out Penn State, again, this is a kid that was going to visit campus and just said straight up, I'm committing to Rutgers. This is it. That's, if you're counting at home, I think that's 2 in a row, right?
Yeah, that's 2 in a row. And I believe he has a connection to Gavin Sidwar, the quarterback commitment of the 26 class as well, right?
They played on the 7-on-7 team together. I forgot about that. I forget what the hell it is. It's not Miami Raw. It's one of those.
They're in Tampa.
Those overtime 7-on-7 teams. But yeah, besides the point, I mean, having a connection with him is huge, and it seems like Gavin Sidwar is kind of becoming the leader of this recruiting quest a bit.
Yeah, and I saw that there were some quotes from from Carter saying that him and Gavin Sidwar had, started talking to other kids in the class to try and get them to join. Have you heard about any specific names that they're trying to bring with them to Rutgers?
I don't have any specific names, but I do know that they are pushing heavily for in-state kids right now. You can kind of go up and down the list there. But Rutgers, I mean, had a hell of a list for recruiting visitors this weekend in general. There's no one specific I'm really looking at right now, but I'm sure that, I mean, it's an easy sell when you can say, hey, we got a pretty highly ranked quarterback. Hey, we got a 4-star receiver. You could be the next receiver. You could be the tight end. You could be the offensive lineman to block for us. This class has a chance to be next level good.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything from the visit itself that you've heard from recruits about how things went or what they actually ended up doing on the visit?
No, nothing specific. I know they did go to Shiano's house for a pool party. I know that was a big thing that a lot of kids raved about. You get basically like treated like a god almost for like the weekend there. All the coaches are just basically all over you, trying to talk to you about Rutgers. So it's just basically a barbecue with a bunch of recruits, a bunch of your boys sometimes if you have teammates coming. But no, it sounds like things just went really well.
Yeah, and it went so well they got a commitment from the class of 2027 as well, which I don't know how many commitments they've gotten 3 classes ahead in the past, but they got one this past weekend in Florida tight end Connor Winn, who committed really early. Tell us a little bit about what Rutgers is getting in Connor Winn.
So this was his 3rd visit to campus. He was on campus last July for the same event. He went to campus for, I forget what game it was this past fall, but he just came to campus again and just fell in love with the program. He's always spoken very highly about Rutgers. Now, he doesn't have a crazy offer list like the rest of these guys, but again, 2027. So, I mean, what are we talking about? I see that and I'm like, holy shit, I'm old as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, he actually originally had a really good relationship with Coach Ulrich and Coach Shiano, but that kind of obviously changed a little bit now that Ulrich is gone. He also has played against Sean Ashenfelder's team, the 2025 quarterback commit. So there's a little bit of I don't know, connection there, I guess you could say. But the 2 of them have specifically talked about Rutgers in the past. So that's always interesting because we don't really hear much about Sean Ashenfelder. He's a little bit of a quieter kid, but he's obviously still kind of recruiting a little bit too. So, but yeah, no, this just seems like a typical 6'3", 215-pound tight end. I haven't watched his tape in a while because I just didn't think they were going to get a 2027 kid personally. But yeah, from what I remember, he was pretty athletic. He had good hands, good speed. But like I kind of stated previously, most of these tight ends are going to mostly be blockers more than anything else, especially under Shiraka's offense, which I've posted it a couple times on the boards. Dating back to his first tenure at Rutgers, even previous to that, he's only had like really 1 season where he's used a tight end, and that was Brevin Spanford with Minnesota 4 years ago. But other than that, most of his tight ends are getting like 100 yards, 200 yards max on a season. So I'd expect this guy to just mostly be a blocker going forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty standard for the Kirk Soraka offense. I mean, he doesn't typically get tight ends super involved in the passing game. So just saying a tight end will primarily be a blocker is kind of expected, I guess.
Yeah,
but
it's disappointing.
But it also just kind of goes to show how well this staff is recruiting right now. They're just kind of getting most of the guys that they really want and getting guys early to be the Pied Piper of those recruiting classes. It looks like Rutgers has found 2 early Pied Pipers of the 26th class and might have one for the 27 class as well in Connor Winn. Is there anything else about any of the 3 commitments that you wanted to touch on any further before we move on to something else?
Not that I can really think of. I know. No, that's really it. I mean, it's just really good recruiting for Rutgers recently, and if they can, I've said it multiple times, if they can have a big season this year, as a lot of people expect. I mean, you saw Jake Butt at Big Ten Media Days say Rutgers could be a 10-win program this year. You get that on top of the recruiting momentum you have right now. What is it? The ceiling is the roof, or the roof is the ceiling. Michael Jordan used to say.
You're talking about the Michael Jordan quote. It's the ceiling is the roof.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane what they could do this year if they win some games.
Yep. And Connor Winn's high school has actually produced a good amount of high-end talent. Xavier Hutchinson, the wide receiver who's currently on the Houston Texans, went to Bartram Trail, and also the infamous Nathan Peterman went to Bartram Trail as well, both current NFL players. So they got something in the water down there outside of Jacksonville.
Yeah, and this is just Rutgers continuing to do well in Jacksonville. Like it's an
Yep.
area that I don't know if they've hit previously before the 1.0 era. I think it was mostly focused on South Florida, Miami like area, but now they're dominating Jacksonville again. So or for the first time.
Yep. Expanding that recruiting base. Speaking of expanding the recruiting base, Rutgers has landed quite a few kids in Georgia the last few years who ended up being some pretty good players. And it seems like some of the local schools are starting to wake up to that. Rutgers commitments, Braxton Kyle and Chase Linton received some pretty big offers this past weekend. Braxton Kyle got an offer from Texas Tech, and Chase Linton, the defensive end, got an offer from Georgia. So let's first talk about Chase Linton. Where do things stand in his recruitment? Obviously, he's committed, but picking up that Georgia offer is going to be tough to turn down for a Georgia kid.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really tough. Now he did visit Georgia on Friday before visiting Rutgers on Saturday, so they were able to get him to campus still. So that's always a good sign. But it's not going to be easy. This is Georgia, home state kid, and it's the Georgia Bulldogs, the two-time national champs in the past 3 years. So
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to argue against them, especially when it's the hometown school. You can't really blame a kid if he was to do it, but they are still pushing for him. They still think they have a pretty good shot at keeping him. We'll see if that stays that way or not. But yeah, as of right now, it's just a wait and see mode.
Yeah, no, I was shocked to see it come through. I guess I'm even more surprised that they allowed him to visit Georgia. I know that they have a pretty strict, you can't visit somewhere unless if you're committed kind of thing. But I feel like that's also it's case by case in a lot of ways.
I don't think they knew about this one. To be fair,
Got it.
I think it was a little bit more of a he's where.
Okay.
And it's like, okay, like I mean, like they were trying to see if he got the offer or not, and I'm waiting. I get a text from our Georgia guy, and boom, offer. And now went to Rutgers though on Saturday, so that's always a good sign. We'll just have to wait and see kind of what's going to happen there.
Yeah, more to come on that, but obviously not a great thing for the commitment to Rutgers to get a Georgia offer. So that's all I got recruiting wise. Is there anything else recruiting wise you wanted to hit on before we jump over to some team related stuff on the next podcast?
Braxton Kyle, I mean, got the Texas Tech offer, but I don't really see it being a super threat there. But it also goes to show you how good Rutgers has been recruiting. Even their under the radar guys are snagging major offers, Power 4 offers, Power 5 offers, whether it be Georgia, whether it be Texas Tech. We've been told some other schools are lurking around against with some of other Rutgers' other commitments. But it sounds like they're doing a pretty damn good job on the trail. They're doing a pretty damn good job of keeping these guys committed too. So just kind of have to wait and see what happens with like a Chase Linton and Braxton Kyle. But I'm pretty confident they have a good shot of keeping them.
Love to hear that. More on that, I'm sure, in the days and weeks to come. But that is it for part one of today's podcast. For me and Richie, this has been another edition of the Night Report podcast. Signing off.